We all know Lady Justice is blind. Or is she? The sword she holds swiftly cuts through obstacles to deliver justice. But is this always the case? Rising concerns over potential corruption and inefficiency of the current judicial proceedings have sparked immense debate over whether employing AI judges instead of human ones would advance the current justice system. I think this issue ultimately boils down to examining the roles of judges and the goals of the justice system. And just as a yardstick, whichever party, human or AI, more efficiently executes the goals of the justice system is considered more ideal. And I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions on this topic, so feel free to comment down below. But personally, for me, I believe that AI might eventually replace human judges, and those things are supported by the following arguments. But wait, before we get into the arguments, let's define our keywords first. And you might be wondering, why are we wasting our time defining keywords? And I totally understand. In fact, there's a joke that goes around that's like people who, that says that lawyers, or, at least people who want to study law like I do, tend to overcomplicate things for no reasons. And I get it, but I'm here to tell you that we're not just doing it to make our lives more difficult or to make your lives more difficult. But I find that when you're defining keywords, you actually have a clearer and more systematic idea of the arguments that you're going to dwell into. And also, I think that it gives you a lot of new ideas that you might otherwise have not thought of. So I think that when you're defining keywords, it's a very helpful thing to do, whether that's for essays or, podcasts or basically anything. So it seems a little boring, but trust me, it helps. So without further ado, let's get into defining keywords. First up on the list, we have AI, or artificial intelligence. You've all heard a lot about it, but what does it actually mean? Well, it basically means an automated, pattern-based algorithm that makes predictable and systematic decisions. And an important thing to note here is that it does not rely on human intervention. The definition of judicial proceeding is the process of convicting and sentencing by a judge. To replace just basically means to take over the role of a party. And the role of the justice system? This is an interesting one because for thousands of years, people have tried to come up with the best explanation to what a perfect or an ideal justice system would look like. But let's just keep it simple here and to say that the role of the justice system is to have an impartial and proportional conviction and sentencing process. Now, the words impartial and proportional are very big topics within moral philosophy and law itself, but we'll not dive into that just yet. And once again, let me remind you again that the crux of this issue is to examine the role of judges and the roles of the justice system. And once again, whichever party, human or AI, more effectively executes those goals of the justice system is considered more ideal. Now that we get that out of the way, let's move on to our actual arguments. My first point is that AI is able to analyze and interpret legal information much faster and much more precisely than human judges. So I think it's really important here to trace back to the role of judges. And in my opinion, a fundamental trait of a good judge is the ability to accurately sift through many statutes, case laws, and past precedents. And even more so, there's a lot of time constraints. In practice, judges must do that very quickly because they often have multiple hearings in just one day. And as a result, AI might actually outperform human judges in tasks requiring memory, data synthesis, and systematic thinking. This is because these algorithms have been programmed to systematically break down complex concepts in a flowchart-like manner. Those who have studied computer science know what a flowchart is. It's basically just a system where you systematically go through each steps, and there are loops, things like that. And in fact, Professor Felicity Legg from the University of New South Wales found out that, and I quote, "A key benefit to predictive analytics is that they can find correlations that the human brain cannot find by harnessing enormous amounts of computing power and data." And not only that, the fact that AI programs can address legal conflicts in a timely manner means that the delays within the judicial proceedings may be shortened, which ultimately means that justice may be served more quickly. Why is this relevant? I mean, like, judicial proceedings are already time-consuming anyway. But hear me out, okay? There is a fundamental legal maxim which states that justice delayed is justice denied. So, superior, exact, and quick decision-making skills enabled AI to uphold a more impartial and proportional justice system. And once again, just to prove my point, let's take a look at the Babri Masjid demolition case in India. I'm sorry for my pronunciation. So, this ancient temple was vandalized, and sadly it was demolished in 1992 due to riots and conflicts between the Muslims and the Hindus, which ultimately led to a prolonged legal battle. And guess how long it took to finally resolve this legal battle? Like almost 30 years, because in 2020, the Supreme Court of India finally ruled this demolition illegal, which works in favors for the Hindus. But by then, as you can probably imagine, in a population of which the majority are pious Hindus, this judicial delay triggered immense frustration and, to some, even a loss of trust in the Indian justice system. Now, this topic in and of itself is still highly controversial in India, but point being, justice delayed is justice denied. So perhaps with AI's precise and quick analysis skills, justice may be delivered on time to ensure an effective justice system. Moving on to my second point, is that AI is less vulnerable to biases and human judges may consciously or subconsciously have. AI is less vulnerable to biases that human judges may consciously or subconsciously have. As humans, judges are still susceptible to media pressure, public opinion, and corruption, all of which may hinder the impartiality of the judicial process. But if you think that biases are only expressed and explicit, then think again, because they can also manifest themselves in the forms of implicit and unintentional biases. A human judge may favor parties from certain socioeconomic backgrounds or certain ethnic groups without even realizing it. On the other hand, AI judges only make decisions based on the given algorithm assigned to them, so they do not soak up these subconscious predispositions, and therefore their verdicts may be a lot fairer. I recently found out this, and I thought that it was quite interesting, is that the study conducted by the Law Project in Australia showed that even though attractiveness has had little to no effect on a judge's verdict of guilt, which is whether a person is deemed guilty or not, human judges gave lower sentences for conventionally attractive defendants and rather than unattractive ones for the same offense. And sometimes it was up to 300% more. This suggests that the subconscious biases in humans may hinder the impartiality of the justice system. So yeah, justice may not always be blind, which is why more and more people are arguing in favor of AI judges taking over human ones. However, as with all things in this world, there's always going to be dissenting viewpoints. And one of the most prominent arguments against the use of AI judges has to do with the fact that these algorithms currently lack emotional intelligence, because they cannot mechanically analyze or weigh up relevant emotional factors as well as humans do. This is because they're simply not programmed to take into account unique or unprecedented factors that may arise in the hearing which could affect the verdict. For example, during the conviction process, the AI program may not fully understand the motive behind a crime, Like, yes, they might know what it is, but they do not fully understand the mens rea. And additionally, during the sentencing process, it may not completely consider mitigating factors such as the defendant's emotional burdens if they have dependents. For example, there's going to be a lot of emotional toil placed on someone if they're sent to jail and they have a young child to look after or old and ill parents to look after. And after all, a fair justice system is not simply quid pro quo. It's not simply 1 + 1 is 2. It's not mathematical certainty like that. But it actually requires profound knowledge of a person's circumstances to decide on the most proportional verdict. And hence, emotional intelligence may be a drawback of artificial intelligence and at the same time an advantage for human judges. But once again, as with all things in the world, there are rebuttals and dissenting arguments to dissenting arguments. And one of which being that emotional intelligence is not an ability reserved for humans. Now, according to Harari's Homo Deus book, I know I'm quoting him a lot, but he's honestly one of my favorite authors. So he's saying that emotional intelligence is not something that's exclusive to only humans, and that in the future, AI algorithms may be programmed to master the skill. This is because there are actually rational explanations for emotions. For instance, we feel excited because our neurotransmitters release the dopamine hormone. And it's not because you suddenly feel that way just because you do, or you've been possessed by some evil spirit. It's because of your hormones. And therefore, it may just be a matter of time before AI is equipped with similar biochemical responses, and so they could exhibit empathetic reactions the similar way that humans do. And additionally, even if that's just fiction and that's simply not possible to equip AI with emotional responses, the primary and the most important role of a judge is to still be as impartial as possible. An AI judge may have assistance from a human jury or human judges to make up for its current lack of social intelligence. But ultimately, this minor drawback of a lack of social intelligence is insignificant in comparison to what AI can do in regards to its role as a judge. So there you have it. So this was a very prevalent, and it's being increasingly relevant in today's world. So we've covered this topic of whether AI judges can replace human judges to improve the judicial system in the 5th episode of The Law Enthusiasts. And, I wonder if you guys notice this at all, but all of my arguments, whatever that may be in today's episode, all trace back to the concept of what is meant by a good judicial system. And I must tell you, this is a very big question, and it has been discussed ever since the time of Greek philosophers such as Aristotle up until, John Locke. And now in the 21st century, we are still contemplating what an ideal or a perfect judicial system looks like. So it's an ongoing debate, and I don't think it's going to end anytime soon. So I just hope that after this episode, you might agree with me or you might not agree with me, and that's totally fine and totally welcomed. But I just hope that after listening to this episode, you might take up interest in such topics such as the implications of artificial intelligence or the role of the justice system. But overall, this was it for the 5th episode of The Law Enthusiasts. And as always, I really appreciate all of you guys listening and subscribing and liking these videos that I make. I really do, I genuinely do appreciate it. So yeah, thank you so much and goodbye.